Ever feel like your e-learning content could use a little spice? Picture this. Your learners fully immersed in a 360 degrees experience, not just clicking through the slides, but navigating a whole new world. And no, they won't need goggles for this one. Before we dive in, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Tia Pez, and welcome to the Art of Creative Learning.
Visit my website to explore all my tutorials, including today's feature. The individual tutorial page will highlight the example we'll be creating, along with the downloadable working files, completely free. You'll also find written job aids to help you follow along with the sectioned videos.
It's your one-stop hub for creating innovative and engaging e-learning content. If you do not have a 360-degree camera or your client doesn't, you can still absolutely build 360-degree landscapes. I found this nifty tool that I'm pretty sure is for game users, but definitely can be used for our needs in instructional design. So you're going to head over to skybox.blockadelabs.com. And once you're here, you will need to sign up for, it'll still let you render, but in order to download, you will need to sign up for an account. So you can sign up for free, and then it just limits you. You get very little renders and you get very little downloads with the free. And I think it's even watermarked the image at the bottom. So you can always work with that. If you just want to test it and play around, I will tell you that their subscription for monthly, it's very affordable. It's like $13, I want to say, a month, give or take. And you can cancel at any time. So if I'm working on a bunch of projects or just a few projects, I can sit here and play with it and get the items that I need. And then I cancel it when I don't have plans to use it, and then I reactivate. So I've never had an issue. It's all online. I don't have to call anybody. And it's literally just like, go move back down to the freebie account or move up to the paid account, and I pay as I go for the months. Now, I have been using it quite frequently, so for the last few months I've actually kept it, but when I first found it, I did like off and on and off and on. So don't worry about that, and it's easy to switch back and forth. So once you get your free account, if you just want to test it, you are going to go up here to your little icon, your little, I guess, profile button, and you're going to hit Skybox AI. Now, there is so much more that can be done with this program than I actually just use it for. I know that you can like draw out your set. So if you have something super specific in mind, I have not actually done those things. I've just kind of seen some videos on it, and that looks really neat. I just haven't had time to play with it. But for our purposes today, you're going to come down to the prompt box down here, and we're just going to type interior, office, computers, desks, chairs, corporate office setting. Okay, so obviously you would tailor this to the specific project you're working on, and you can just type in like what you're looking to find, whether it's interior, exterior, or and then down here there is an enhance your prompt. I don't think I could use this when I had the freebie account. I just can't remember offhand. But what this does is it adds language around my prompt. And then you can also add negative text in here. So negative is like, it's not going to show people or characters, or so these are all things it's going to avoid putting in the image. So you can customize that. And if you come over here to this drop-down menu, this will show you the type of art style. So depending on what you want, maybe this would work for you. But for my audience, I'm trying to go a little more realistic. So we're going to come back. You can do Model 3 Realistic. I think for the one that we'll be using a little bit later, I did the Ultra High Def render. And then you can hit Generate. And it's going to automatically enhance my prompt. See, there it goes. Sleek, modern corporate office with rows of gleaming computers, immaculate desks, ergonomic chairs. And for us in lighting, that sounds like an office, yes. So it enhanced my prompt, and you can see this little green progression bar here, and it will just kind of finish up and it will load our image. And you can see up here in the corner here, it'll tell you how many renders that you're allowed and then how many you have left. And as you render, it'll deduct. Okay, this isn't bad. And yeah, depending on what you're looking at, and each time you get a render, you're going to get something completely different. So even if we were to do this in person as a class, like each person is going to get something different. So you can kind of generate again, just kind of see what you get, and know that all your generations are tied to your profile. So you can, generate a few, and then maybe you end up going back and being like, man, I really like the one from that I generated 2 ago. I should just go with that one. You can absolutely do that. All you have to do is click on your profile here, which after this renders, I will show you, and it'll go and show you all your renders. So once this is done here, almost done. It's thinking. There we go. Okay. So maybe you want color on the wall. Maybe, you want it in an office instead of what appears to be a desert. But you can see here that the possibilities are endless with AI, and you get different things every time. But so if we wanted to download this one, all we would have to do is come over here to download, choose the type of file that you want to download. Generally, I would pick PNG over JPEG. I'm going to cancel this because I do not want to download it, but that is all you would do and it'll download. If you want to go back to any of your generations, all you have to do is click your little icon there. It'll take you to like your dashboard. This is also where you can manage and cancel your membership. And just so you know, Skybox has not endorsed me one little bit. This is just a program that I am using and really like. So they have not, this advertisement is not paid by them. So yes, you can come down here, and this is the render that I actually pre-did for this tutorial. So we will come in here and you've got little cubicles, little desks, and you will find this in the source files for the working files that are downloadable. The link will be in the description. So once we'll get out of here, we are going to head over to Photoshop. So you do not have to fear Photoshop for those of you who are not experts. You don't have to be. So it's very super simple. In the download folder, you will see the 360-degree office security concerns OG. That's the one I have up, the original. And there will be another one that I cannot remember off the top of my head. It's like final. But we want the OG to edit. The other one will be ones with edits that I already made for the next steps in the tutorial so that we all are looking at the same thing. Feel free to do your own, but just for consistency and not everybody having access to Photoshop or this or that, I still wanted them to be able to try this. Okay, so within this image, we're going to pretend that the 360-degree interaction that we are making is information security. So things like having your computer unlocked at work, things that are pretty standard within an office building. Generally, they don't allow you to use external hard drives or flash drives, and then, not having confidential papers left out. A lot of them have gone 100% digital and they don't allow actual physical papers at all. But, for this hypothetical situation, we're going to add some of these things in. So let's just say we wanted to add a flash drive over here. We're going to deselect. We're going to come over here to my lasso tool, and I'm just going to kind of circle the area that I want my flash drive to be added in. And so much of this used to take me so long to do, but all these new AI tools just, They're so much fun and so fast. So we're going to come in here and we're going to click generate and I'm going to type flash drive and come over here and hit generate. When it generates, it will do 3 variations at a time, but you're not limited to that. So that's a gigantic flash drive. And then we still have a really big one there. If we wanted to generate more, we could come over here. I think the circle that I did is just too big. So we might have to go back and change that. Yeah, it's like trying to fill up the circle. That's okay. Let's go ahead and just delete this layer. Because, I mean, if you wanted to make it big, you absolutely could. Yes, delete. Yes. You absolutely could fill up that circle, but for like sizing comparability to the other items within the office, those were just too big. So let's kind of make it smaller. I think that's a little bit smaller. If not, we'll try again. Flash drive. That's a little bit better. And these are so weird. They have like things coming out both sides. Yeah, that's AI for you. Doesn't have to be perfect necessarily. We'll give it another try and see what it comes up with. There we go. This is the one I want. Come on. There we go. That's what I'm going to do. You could still mess around with this if you wanted to make that a little bit smaller, but for this, we're going to keep going. And over here, I want to put some confidential papers. So we are just going to do papers. And if you notice, I didn't click the generate fill over here. It came over here automatically. So we're going to generate there. So there's always multiple options that will give you the same results. And that's too many papers. Maybe I made the circle too big on this too. Let's see. Oh, I'm having issues with my mouse. There we go. Still too many. And sometimes you'll have to adjust your prompt just like you would with the other one. We'll leave it like that for now. And you can see those images were not in here before. I am always a big believer in leaving your original alone or just saving this as a Photoshop file. So that way the layers are all stationed. But to export this, you're going to come over here to export and then export as. And you can change the file type up here, but I'm going to leave it PNG. And once you export it again, it'll prompt you for where you want to save it. So once you do that, then it'll be time to actually bring it into Storyline. So in the download files, which you can find in the description below, there is a working file, Storyline file. So if you open that up, you'll see it already has just the timer box and the items found. These are just shapes that were built straight in Storyline, and you can customize them however you like it. But for our purposes, I just wanted those to be out of the way. So to insert the image, you're going to come up to Insert tab and then click on the 360-degree image. And then we don't want the original for this. We want the edited. So we're going to pull open the edited file. And automatically when it imports it, it's going to set it on top of these images that I already created. So we'll just pull it down to the bottom so that we want these to sit on top. And the way to think of this is basically the items on top of a 360 is kind of like your camera viewer. So these will stay stationary no matter what if you're moving around the 360 image. So once we've got the image opened, we're going to go inside of the image by clicking Edit 360. And the first thing I want to do is create my variables. So I'm going to create a variable for each item. And we're going to come over here to our Manage Project Variables box there. And we're just going to create true false variables for each one. So we'll do confidential papers, change this to true false, and the default value of false. We're going to add open computer, true false. And then we will add, the last one is a flash drive. Change that to true false, false. Okay. So once we have these three variables, we can go ahead and hit OK. The next thing we are going to do is actually create our hotspots around these variables. So while you're in the editing mode, you can move this around as you would like. And we're going to come over here to hotspot, and we're just going to trace around each item. So this computer is unlocked, and this is one of the, and we're just going to name it, you can name it open computer, unlocked computer. For this, we'll do open computer. You can also add text in the body. If you don't add text in the body, it won't show anything, like no box down here where this pre-filled enter body is, and there it'll just be blank and it'll only show open computer. You could add some remediation here, but for these purposes, we're just going to switch it to that. And then we're going to draw our next one, and we're going to add another hotspot here. We're going to trace around the flash drive. And sometimes when I create them, after I create them, they kind of pop, and I don't really know why, but just kind of move that back over there. Then we're going to come back to our confidential papers over here, and we're going to trace around that. And move that back there. All right, so now we've created our hotspots around that. When you click them, it will show the little pop-up that'll tell you what it is. It's also a good idea to add some placebo ones in, some fake ones, like, nope, this is safe, this is okay, because when you're in the actual 360 landscape, when it's live, when you move around, it goes from cursor to a little finger click over anything that's clickable. So just to make it a level harder, you can add some fake clickable items as well. But the only three that need to be clicked on before they can move on would be these three. So you would follow the steps that we're going to go over. We're going to turn off the progress indicator. That is just a little notification down here that tells them how many total items that are clickable, especially if you're going to add placebo items in. You would not want it to show that there are 6 items when there's really only 3 that they need to find. So we are going to unclick that. Usually in the instructions of the interaction, I'll let them know how many that they have to find. But once you've got these in, we're going to come up to the label, or actually it's to the interaction tab up here at the top, and where it says hotspot, I'm going to click that. And there are reveal hotspots, pulse if they're unvisited. We don't want that for this interaction. Normally, if you are trying to make them click on everything to find out information, but in this activity, we want them to search and find what's wrong with this image. So we don't want to tell them where they're at. We want them to be able to find them on their own. So we don't want those to pulse or let them know. So we unclick that. And once we have done that, we want to set up our triggers for the hotspots. And so we're going to come over here and we're going to adjust variable, and we're going to say the confidential papers when the user clicks the confidential papers. So when the user clicks the confidential papers, it's going to switch the confidential paper variable to true. So it's going to let them know that that's been visited. And we're going to add the same thing for the other two items. So flash drive is set to true when the user clicks the flash drive. And last one, adjust variable open computer to true when the user clicks the open computer. And this is all that we need to do inside of the 360-degree landscape image. So once we get this far, you'll be ready for the next part, which we can test this. You can hit save close, and we're going to go to preview. It's always a good idea to test. In preview mode, so we can move around here. You can see these items say stationary on top of the viewfinder. And when we click confidential papers, open computer, and the flash drive, all of them pop up as they are supposed to, and nothing flashed to let me know. So we're going to hit close preview, and that's all there is to this portion.
Adding a counting timer. If you want a countdown timer, be sure to jump to the next chapter.
Welcome back. Just to recap, what we've done so far is create our 360-degree image. We brought it into Storyline. We created our basic variable and hotspots within the 360-degree image in Storyline. The next step is for us to actually set up the timer. And this timer is going to be counting the time it takes them to find all the images. So we are going to start with creating some basic variables. Make sure that the variables that we create match in the name perfectly, because there is some JavaScript that we will be installing in a little bit, where if the variables don't match perfectly, the script will not work. One will be the minutes placeholder, so min_0. And this one is going to be a text. And we're going to set this to 0. And then we're going to add minutes. And this one will be a number. We're also going to set that to 0. And remember, if you haven't been to the tutorial website that's got our working files, it'll have all these videos, and it'll have the job aids, which we will need for the JavaScript later. You can find all of that in the description below. So the next one we will set up will be the seconds placeholder. And this one's going to be text. We're going to set it at 0. And we're going to add our seconds. This will be a number, and that will be 0. And the last one we're going to set up right now is timer final, which is also going to be a text, but this time we'll leave it blank. So just for a quick high-level overview, the minutes placeholder and seconds placeholder, when Storyline is counting, if it only has 0 to start off with or single digit to start off with, and it jumps to 2 digits, the text actually gets cut off. What we have to have is a placeholder that can go blank and go switch to 0 based on what the numbers of the seconds and the minutes is. So if you don't use the placeholders, When it switches to double digits from single digits, the text actually gets cut off on the edges and you can't fully see the numbers. So that's our solve, is to have the placeholders, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. Once we've got all of our variables there, we're going to hit OK. And now it's time to set some triggers. So let's go into the slide. And the first thing that we're going to do is create a new layer. And this is going to be our timer layer. So I'm just going to name it timer. In this layer, we're going to adjust the timeline to exactly 1 second. And then we're going to add a few triggers. The first trigger is we are going to adjust variable seconds. And we're going to do add 1. When the timeline ends on this layer. And then hit OK. We're going to add another trigger. That is adjust variable minutes. And we're going to add 1 to minutes when the timeline ends on this layer, if we're going to add a condition to this one, if seconds equals 60. So when the seconds timer gets up to 60, then we will add 1 to the minutes because that's been a minute. So we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to add another trigger to adjust variable seconds to 0, set seconds to the value of 0 when the timeline ends on this layer, if seconds equals 60. So the moment it hits 60, then it's going to jump down to 0 again, start over. Make sure that you have this after the minutes. So then as soon as it hits 60, it increases the minutes and then starts over. If you do it the other way around, it will not add to the minutes because it's already changed to 0 before it hits the order of this trigger. So the order of triggers can be very important. So then the last trigger that we're going to add to this layer is to jump to 0 minutes, 0 seconds on this layer when the timeline ends on this layer. What that's going to do is once this layer is shown, even though it's empty, it's going to use the timeline as your timer. So it's going to hit 1 second. The moment it ends, it jumps back to the beginning. And it's just going to use that timeline as your timer to then add to the seconds and then eventually add to minutes, depending on how long they stay in this interaction. Now that we've added our triggers to this layer, we're going to return to the base layer. And we're actually going to add the numbers into our timer. So let's go over to Insert, Text Box. Let's draw out where we want our number text. Now that we've got our box there, we're not going to type just yet. We're going to go to Insert, Reference, Minute, Placeholder, insert minutes, then our colon, insert seconds placeholder, and then lastly, we're going to enter the seconds. And then we're going to center this And you can stylize this however you'd like, but I'm just going to center it, make it a little bigger, and I'm going to turn it white. There we go. While we're on this base layer, we're going to add a few more triggers. So we're going to adjust variable, minute, this is our minute placeholder, to blank when the variable minute changes if the value of minutes, not the minutes placeholder, is greater than 9. So what's that saying is if the minutes become more than 9, so it becomes 10, then that placeholder for that 0 doesn't need to be there. So we're going to make it blank. Then we're going to add another trigger, adjust variable, minute placeholder, set it to 0 when the variable minutes change if minutes is less than 10. So when it goes from 2 digits down to a single digit and it's less than 10, then the placeholder needs to be there. Okay, so now we're going to add our seconds. So adjust variable, seconds placeholder, to blank when the variable seconds changes if seconds is greater than 9. So once this would turn to 10, it's 2 digits. We don't need the placeholder, so we're going to turn it blank, and now we need the opposite. So adjust variable, seconds placeholder, to 0. When the variable changes, seconds, if seconds is less than 10. So if it goes below 2 digits, it becomes 1 digit and the 0 needs to come back. We're going to add one more trigger before we test, and that is show layer timer. When the timeline starts, once the timer is visible, it's basically turning the timer on, and it'll continue to run through a second and going back to the start and counting. So let's go ahead and test that and make sure everything is working as according to plan. We're going to preview this slide. And we've got counter here. So I'm going to wait just a moment. I'll bring you back when we hit a minute to make sure that the minutes is working. Okay, so we've got about 5 seconds left here. We're going to make sure that the minute actually starts counting. There we go. And then the seconds started over. So as soon as it hit 60, it switched to add 1 minute on the timer and then started the seconds over again, which is exactly the behavior we want in our timer. The next triggers we want to set up are the triggers that will actually stop the timer. And this is where the variables that we set up in 360-degree image come into play. We don't know what order they're going to click things in, but we are going to hide layer. So if we hide the timer layer, that means it'll stop and the timer will stop. And we're going to hide the timer layer when the variable changes, and we'll do the first variable, confidential papers. And we need to make sure that all 3 items are found before the timer stops. So we're going to say if confidential papers is true, if the flash drive is also true, as well as the open computer is also true. So if confidential papers is picked last and all 3 items are true, it will hide the timer layer. Now we need to copy this for the 2 other variables. You can build it from scratch again, but in this case, we're going to hit copy and paste, and we're just going to change the confidential papers to flash drive. So if the flash drive changes and then all 3 variables are true, it will hide the timer layer. And one more time for the last open computer, so that also all 3 items are true when the open computer clicks. So it doesn't matter what order, it'll hide the timer. So let's go ahead and test that real quick. Our timer is going. The computer is open. We have the flash drive and confidential papers. And now you can see it is frozen at 8 seconds. That's how fast we were able to find all 3 items. Next, we're going to add the found items counter, so it will count as it finds the items. In order to do that, we need to add a variable. We're going to name this variable found items, and we're going to change this to a number and starting at 0. Next, we're going to insert our text box up here for the final found items. We're going to go back to insert, reference, found items. Same thing, stylize this as you wish. I am going to center it. I'm going to turn it white and make it a little bigger. I'm also going to lift it up a little bit. There we go. Okay, now we've added that variable in there, but now we need to add the triggers that tie to that variable. So we're going to adjust variable, found items. We're going to add the value of 1 to the found items when the variable changes for confidential papers. Because again, we can't use set here. We don't know what order they're going to find the items. So we needed to add 1 to the found items variable when it finds one. And we're going to go ahead and just add when confidential papers is true. Adjust variable found items, add the value of 1 when the variable changes. If the variable changes is the flash drive variable, and if the flash drive is true. Last one. Adjust variable found items, add 1 if the variable changes, open computer, and if open computer is true. All right, let's go ahead and give this a test. Timer is going. We've got 1 there. We're going to go in a different order this time. 2 and 3. And it doesn't matter if you go back and click, it will stop at 3. There we go. So in this case, they cannot continue until all 3 items are found. What we need is a continue layer. So we're going to add a layer, name it continue. We are going to just design one really quick. We're going to add a box here. And we're gonna change the color. We're gonna change it to purple. I'm gonna add some text in here. Way to go! We found all the items. We are gonna change that to white. Way to go! You found all the items. And if you wanted to, you could even be like, amazing time, and insert timer final. Now timer final, because as we set this up and each number is individual, you wouldn't be able to pass this through to the timer final. And that's where the JavaScript comes in, so that it'll combine all of this information from the timer that we built and put it into one variable. Now you might ask, why would I do that? Well, you could put it on your slide as a congratulatory number. And you can also use this variable to pass through for a leaderboard or something of that sorts to track who was able to do it the fastest time. Gamify it a little bit more. So we won't go into the leaderboard. That's another episode. But for now, you would need to know how to do this timer final variable. We're going to go back down to the base layer and we're going to add a few more triggers. Show layer, continue, when variable changes, confidential papers, if confidential papers is true, flash drive is true, and open computer is true. All right, same thing. We're going to copy and paste. And we're going to change confidential papers to flash drive. Paste one more time. Change it to open computer. Now let's add in our JavaScript so that it'll combine all the information into the timer into a single variable. So we're going to add one more, and this will be on the continue layer. We're going to scroll down to execute JavaScript. Now, for anybody that doesn't speak JavaScript, that's okay. I don't either. The script that you're looking for is in the job aid on the tutorial website, which can be found in the description below. And even though I don't speak JavaScript very well, and for anybody who does, if I butcher this, I apologize. But this is how it makes sense in my mind. This first line is the JavaScript talking to the storyline player. So, hey player, we need this variable. And then JavaScript renames it. We need this variable. Go get that one. This is JavaScript renaming it. And it will pull these variables. And then this last line here is it's then telling the storyline player to set timer final variable with this information. So it's taking the placeholder, which will be blank depending on what the minutes is. Then it's taking the minutes, adding that, and then the colon that's in the parentheses, it will place that in there and then pull these other two variables in order to make one combination of the total. So we're going to hit OK. And we're going to say run this at when the timeline starts on this layer. All right, let's give it a test. Let's go up to preview, this slide, We have open computer, flash drive, and confidential papers. It took us 7 seconds, and it matches down here perfectly. So now this is ready to pass through to a leaderboard, or if you wanted to jazz up this slide a little bit more, or something along those lines. Welcome back. So where we left off, we've completed a 360-degree landscape image and edited it. And then we also brought it into Storyline, and we created all of the hotspot triggers within the 360-degree image and marked all those spots as well as those variables. Now it's time for the fun part, and that is creating the timer. In this episode, we will be creating a counting backwards timer. We're only allowing the learner to have a maximum amount of time to complete this. For this example in this tutorial, we're just going to do 2 minutes. And the first thing that we need to do is actually set up some more variables. We're going to come over to our variable manager, and we are going to add timer variables. Now, it's very important, because there will be code in a little bit that references these variables, that you name them exactly what I have them named. If you make one singular instead of plural or miss one letter, the code will not work later. With that being said, there is some job aids on the tutorial website page that have all of this posted as well, but you can find all of that in the links in the description below. Let's go ahead and get started. We are going to add our first one, which is our minutes. And this one needs to be a number variable. And we're going to set this one for 2. And then we're going to go for our seconds placeholder. We're going to name this sec_0. And this one is going to be named, also, this one's going to be a text, and we're going to start this one with a 0. And then we're going to add seconds with an S, change this to a number, and then we're going to make the number start with 0. And we're going to do one more timer final. And this one will be a text, and we're going to leave it blank. Okay. Just to recap here, we did minutes, and then we did second placeholder, and I'll explain that a little bit more. And then we did seconds, and we did timer final. The second placeholder, when you're counting and you're going from 1 to 2 digits, Storyline will just close the gap. So if you want to keep the 0 in front so that you have minutes, number, you have to have this variable for this seconds 0 that will basically hide and show depending on what seconds is at. We'll get into the triggers in a little bit, but that's just a high overview of what that is and why we're creating it. We've got our variables. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. The next thing we're going to do is actually create our timing layer. We're going to go down here and hit New Layer, and we're going to name this Timer. And basically, we're going to use this blank layer and this timeline as our timer. We're going to adjust this to be exactly 1 second. And then we're going to add in some triggers on this layer. Once we've gone through creating the layer, then we're going to come up here to add a new trigger. And the first one that we're going to create is, we are going to adjust variable. We're going to set this to subtract a value of 1 from seconds. And instead of when the user clicks, we're going to change this to when the timeline ends on this layer. And then we want to change this to if seconds is not 0. Is not equal to 0. So we only want it subtracting from the seconds if there's a value in the seconds. So we don't want it going negative. So that's why we're adding this condition. So we're going to hit OK there. And then we're going to add another one that is adjust variable. We're going to do minutes. And we're going to change this to subtract a value of 1 from minutes when the timeline ends on this layer. And we're going to add 2 conditions to this one. We're going to say if seconds is equal to 0, because if it's 0, it's counted all the way down, and it needs to subtract from 1, or from the minutes, it needs to subtract 1 from the minutes, and if minutes is greater than 0. So what we're saying is that if the seconds have counted all the way down to 0, and there's still minutes to subtract from, then it's going to subtract 1 from minutes. And the next one that we need to add is we are going to add to adjust variable seconds. Seconds. And we're going to set this to 59. And then we're going to say when a variable changes, and the variable that needs to change is minutes. So if it's subtracted 1 from the minutes, that means it needs to change the seconds back up to 59 seconds. And then we're going to add the condition if seconds is 0. If seconds equals 0. And we're going to add one more trigger here, and that is jump to a timer cue point. We're going to have it jump back to 0 minutes and seconds on the timeline of this layer when the timeline ends. So as soon as the timeline ends, it's going to jump back. So it's just going to keep going around until it runs out of time. So anytime this layer is showing, and then in order to shut it off, you hide the layer. That way the timeline doesn't go. And that is going to be our timer. So we're going to hit OK. Once we've added in all of our triggers here, we're going to come back down to the base layer. And now it's time to add our text in here. So we are going to go Insert Text Box. And we're just going to shape out the text here. And instead of typing, we're going to go back to Insert, and we're going to insert a reference, and we're going to put our minutes in. And then we're going to add our colon. And then we're going to come back up to reference. We're going to add our placeholder, because this is where when the seconds get down to the single digits, that leading 0 gets dropped, and that's where we'll want the placeholder to come in. And then we're going to add our seconds. And then from here, you can stylize this. So we're going to come back here and make it centered. We'll leave the font for this one. In my finished file, the font is different, but I'm not worried about it here. But we are going to make it bigger, and we'll bold it, and we'll also turn it white. Okay. We've got our timer set here. And then now we need to add our triggers on the base layer. The first thing that we are going to add is basically when the placeholder shows and hides. We're going to add a trigger. We're going to adjust a variable. We're going to adjust the variable of the placeholder to blank, meaning that it's hidden. And this is also why this is a text variable and not a number variable, because a number variable cannot be changed to blank. It has to be a number. So it's a text variable so that we can switch it to blank. And when the variable changes, when seconds changes, and we're going to add the condition that seconds is greater than 9. So adjust the variable to seconds placeholder to blank when the seconds is less than 9. And then we're going to add another trigger where we're adjusting the variable, the placeholder. This time we're going to change it to 0. So we are moving it back to 0 when the variable seconds changes. If the seconds is less than 10. So once it hits 9, it will populate and turn to 0 and be a placeholder. Okay. Now that we've got those in, I want to add the trigger that is going to show the timer. So show layer timer when timeline starts on this slide. So that way it's going to start the timer when this. So if you wanted to start it later, this is how you would, whenever you want to start it, you would show the layer. Next, we're going to add all the triggers so that when all items are clicked in the 360 image, it will turn off the timer layer, and basically they'll have however many seconds left on the clock. You know, they beat the timer. So we're going to add those triggers next. So we are going to hide layer timer when the variable changes. And this is where the variables that we set up tying to the clicked images within the 360 come in handy. So we're going to grab that confidential papers. If confidential papers is true, but we don't want just confidential papers being true. We want all of them to be true. So if flash drive is true, because you don't know what order they're going to find these in, and open computer is true. So basically, if confidential papers is the last one clicked and all of them are now true, it will hide the timer layer. And we want to copy this one for each of the variables that we have. So you could build this from scratch, but in this case, we're just going to copy and we're going to paste. And then we're going to hide the timer layer if flash drive is clicked, because all 3 are true. And then we'll do it one more time. And then we're going to say this time we're going to change it to the open computer. So when open computer is clicked, if it's the last one clicked and all 3 are true, it will then hide the timer layer. All right, so now we're going to add a number up here that shows the counted items that they found. We need to add a new variable. And we're going to add this, we're going to call it found items. And this one is going to be a number. And we're going to start it at 0. And we need to also use the variables that we set up in the 360 image to trigger the counting. So we're going to add those triggers. We are going to add And because you don't know what order, you can't set it to a number. We want to add it to the number. We are going to adjust variable, found items. We want to change this to add 1 to found items when a variable changes. And we'll do confidential papers first if confidential papers is true. We're going to copy that basically and do the same thing for the next. So we're going to adjust variable, found items, add 1. Oop, not 2. When the variable changes, we already did the papers, so we want to do the flash drive next if flash drive is true. And the last one that says adjust variable found items. We want to make this add. We want to add 1 to the found items when the variable open computer changes if open computer is not true. We've got all of those triggers set up. We're going to add the text here. So we're going to go to insert. We're going to insert text. We're going to put our text here. And we are going to go back to insert, reference, our found items. So same thing, you can stylize this however you'd like. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to center it. And I'm going to turn it white as well. And then I'm also going to bold it. There we go. That will count to let them know how many that they found. I've also done where it's like 0, it'll be the reference, and then I'll do a slash and I'll do the total number, like 3 in this case. So it'll be 0 out of 3 that was found. That's completely up to you, however you want to show them. All right, now we have all of our variables set up that's going to count and our timer should work. Let's go ahead and just test it to see if we have everything working at this point. So we have our countdown has started. And then if I click on, we count. And that is exactly what we want. And then our time stopped. But now what? We need our additional layers that will pop up to let them know that they're good to continue. They did a great job. We will add a new layer down here. We're going to call this layer continue. And you can stylize this however you'd like, but we are going to add a shape here, move this here. I'm going to change my theme because I hate these standard colors. Go to design, colors, theme. There we go. And you can add your text here. We're going to do you found all the items. And we're going to make it white. And then I'm going to add another text. Insert. And we're going to do insert, reference. We're going to do the final timer. And we're going to say left on the clock. We're going to make this white. And we're going to center that, make it a little bit bigger but smaller than the headline. And basically, we're going to calculate, we're going to put all the numbers that are here with this is how much time you did it with left on the clock. Like you beat the clock that much. And then we'll add our insert button, center it. I don't think I centered this either. Okay. Let's stylize this button. We're going to do continue. And I tend to like that one. Okay. Okay. We've got our continue button here. And now we need to add the trigger so that it will show this layer once they found all the items. Similar to hide the timer, only this time we're going to show the layer, continue, when the variable changes, because again, we don't know what order they're going to find the items in to click. So we have to have multiple triggers for this. When the variable confidential papers changes and confidential papers is true and flash drive is true and open computer is true. And then we're going to copy and paste that. And this time we're going to switch it so that when the flash drive changes, we're going to paste it once more and switch it to when the open computer changes. So now when we find all the items, it should not only stop the timer, but it should trigger that layer. So let's go ahead and test. Preview this slide. So we've got our timer going down here. And we found 1, we found 2, we found 3. Only it doesn't have our time, but that's because we don't have it set up yet, but everything worked just as it was supposed to. Now you can see you can still kind of move things back here. You can always add a transparent square or a dim square. So let's go ahead and just do that really quick. We're going to add insert. We're going to do, we don't want a 360, I want a shape. I want the square shape. And I'm going to change this to this color. We're going to move it all the way to the bottom on this layer. And then I'm going to make it a little transparent. So I'm going to format this and kind of dim it out there. There we go. The next thing I want to do is actually make it so that the time will show up here. So this actually takes a little bit of JavaScript, but in the job aid, it actually has the JavaScript, so you can copy and paste it. And we're going to come up to the triggers. And we're going to add the JavaScript so that it calculates the timer final on this slide. This is when I was saying earlier that the variables needed to match exactly for this reason. If you don't know JavaScript, neither do I. I know very basics. But in the job aids, it's there for you to copy and paste. So we'll just execute JavaScript. We're going to paste that in here. And just a brief overview, and for anybody that speaks JavaScript really well, if I mess this up, very sorry. This is just how it makes sense in my head. So JavaScript is talking to the player, to storyline player, and it's saying, okay, let's set up this communication. And then it's basically telling it to go get this variable. And it's renaming it this variable for the JavaScript. So JavaScript knows how to interpret. And then it's telling it to go get this variable. And the same thing for this one. And then it's this grabbing this one. And this last line is setting this variable to minutes plus it's going to put the colon in, and then it's going to grab the placeholder. This placeholder will be blank if the seconds is greater than 9. And then if it is not, if it's less than 9, it'll have a 0 here. So it'll either be hidden or not hidden. And then we've got the seconds here. So that's what this JavaScript is saying. So once we hit OK, we're going to do when the timeline starts on this layer and hit OK. So now we're going to test it. So we're going to come up to preview this slide. And we're going to go click, click. And if you notice, the hotspots are a different color now because I changed my theme colors. So it automatically changed the colors. All your items are found and you have 1 minute and 46 seconds left on the clock. So worked perfectly. And then we don't have this set up to go anywhere because it's our only slide, but it's just for aesthetics. So that all works. Now, what happens if they don't find all the items in 2 minutes? So we need a layer for that. We're going to create a new layer and we're going to call it Time's Up. And on the Time's Up layer, we are going to add in basically similar to the other one. We're going to, this time we'll add our first blocker shape here. And I'm totally winging it. Most of the time I would make sure it would be exactly the same transparency, but I don't remember what I set it on. We'll go ahead and set that one. Then we're going to insert another shape. Most of the time I would make sure these shapes are the exact same, but we're winging it. Living on the danger side. Okay, so then we're going to add actually text up at the top that says, oh no! Time's up. Make this bigger and white. We'll center it, and then we'll also actually center it again. Okay. And then what you can do here is I have the images there. This is completely up to you. It's a little extra, but what you can do here is insert the paperwork flash drive and unlocked computer images and just kind of move these down. Adjust them as needed. They're little, basically, clips from the main image, and we're going to edit the state. I'm going to put a text in here. Insert text box. We're going to do unlocked computer. Make that a little wider so it fits on one line. Copy this. And that way it's just a part of the image. I don't have to group anything. I'm going to come back here and edit this state. Edit states. Paste. There we go. We're going to move this over here. We're going to change the text to confidential papers. Now I can't spell. And We're done with that one, and we're going to come over here, do the same thing, edit. There we go. Flash drive. Center it there. Okay. So now we're done. Now we're going to add a couple of triggers. We're going to add one more text box. Insert. See what you've missed. We're just kind of center that in the middle. Now we're going to add a couple of triggers so that it'll automatically show only the ones that they missed. So we're going to come over to the new trigger button. And we are going to change the state. Oh, I forgot to name them and I don't know which one's which. So we're going to come over, unlock papers, and flash drive. Okay, let's try that again. We are going to change the state of flash drive to hidden when the timeline starts on flash drive if flash drive is true. So if it's true, they've clicked on it and they already found it. So then it'll hide it. We're going to repeat this for the other ones. So change the state, unlocked computer to hidden when the timeline starts on unlocked computer if open computer is true. And same one for this. Change the state of papers to hidden when the timeline starts on papers if confidential papers is true. There we go. All right, then we'll add continue. Our continue button. At the bottom. Now we need to add a trigger that will show this layer when the time is up. So we're going to go back to the timer layer and we are going to add change the state we're going to change this to show layer time is up when the timeline reaches when the timeline, so we're going to add the trigger, show layer time is up when the timeline reaches 0 seconds, so when it starts, if the seconds is equal to 0 and the minutes is equal to 0. All right, let's test it. Let's go ahead and change, just so we're not waiting too long, and I might even fast forward the video, we're going to change this to 1 minute instead of a 2-minute timer. Preview this slide. Okay, so I fast forwarded and kind of brought you guys in at the last 10 seconds of the timer. So here we go. 3, 2, one, and this showed. And then this blocker would prevent them from clicking anything at the last second. If we wanted, we can test. Let's go ahead and preview it one more time. I'm going to click one of the items. We'll click this one so that they found one. I'll bring you guys back when it's 10 seconds on the timer left. Okay, we've got one item clicked and we're running out of time. We just want to be sure that that one hides when it pops up and only the two that we didn't click show up. The other things you can do to help gamify it would be to add sound effects for any of the items that you click. If you've got any Placido items that we added, the fakes, you could have a different sound for that. Sometimes I have music playing in the background during this kind of interaction just to help gamify all of it. And then when they click the right answer, I have a special like grand finale sound for when the continue and they found all the items pops up, and this one will have a special sound. So sound effects are really important to really truly give that gamified experience. So I hope you guys liked it. By now, you should have everything you need to create your own 360-degree gamified experience that will not only engage, but also excite your learners. If you found this video helpful, make sure to check out theartofcreativelearning.com for even more resources. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more creative e-learning content just like this.
The art of creative learning, your